Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Krzysztof Wulski, and I'm the publishing director at BalticWind.EU. And I'm delighted to welcome you to this high-level webinar. It couldn't come at a more pivotal moment that we discuss the future of the offshore wind industry. The potential of this sector is immense, and the opportunities, but also responsibilities that we are looking at are monumental. So today we would like to invite you for a discussion of the broader context of net zero industry, which is a key to unlock the full potential of renewable energy in the European Union. So I invite everyone to open our minds to this wealth of insights and expertise of our distinguished panelists. I invite you to engage in a constructive dialogue about this future of the sustainable future of offshore wind. And with that, I would like to give the floor and also introduce Anna Gumbau, who will be the moderator of today's debate, and will also introduce our esteemed panelists. So thank you very much, Anna, for joining us today and for leading this discussion. I wish everyone a productive and fruitful debate on behalf of Baltic Wind, and Anna, the floor is yours.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Krzysztof. It's great to be here, and thank you very much to BalticWind for having me in this high-level webinar, which has the title On the Road to Net Zero Industry, Key Technologies for Offshore Wind. Today we will have a great speakers list with us, in which with whom we're going to be talking about the future of offshore wind. We're seeing a very challenging context for the industry, but also one full of opportunities of very fast-paced innovations coming. And today, the objective of the event is going to be really to understand these trends better, what is expected also from the policy side, and look into the future. So this webinar is also really made for you to be able to ask any questions that pique your curiosity, your attention. What is it something that concerns you about the future of the industry? So you can follow us in Baltic Wind's different social media channels, so either on LinkedIn, on YouTube, or on Twitter. And you can ask any questions in any of these social media channels, and we will have a team behind the scenes that will bring the questions to us here in the panel, and we will try to answer as many of them as possible. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our speakers. So we have with us, first of all, from the European Commission, Policy Officer at the Directorate General for Energy on Research, Innovation and Competitiveness, Pablo Riesgo Aveledo. Welcome, Pablo.
Hello, everyone. Thanks a lot, Anna, for the introduction.
Thank you for being here. Then also with us is the Director of Innovation at Wind Europe, Mr. Ivan Pineda. Hi, Ivan.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today.
Then also we have with us the Head of International Business Development at Ignitis Renewables, Anu Eslas. Good morning, Anu.
Hello, hello. I'm really happy to be here.
And last but not least, connecting all the way from the East Coast of the United States, the Director at the Sensoria Center for Excellence, Valerie Godinez Azcuaga. Good morning, Valerie.
Good morning, Anna. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the invitation.
Great to have all of you here, and looking forward to what's going to be, I think, a great discussion. So maybe I would like to start with you, Pablo, to understand a little bit what's the policy context and the future plans of the European Commission, because we are seeing a lot of initiatives about to come up for the offshore wind, for the wind sector in particular, the wind power package. So it would be great if you could tell us, what are some things that we can expect, and if there's any specific measures that the offshore wind industry in particular should be paying attention to.
Thanks a lot, Anna, and hi to everyone again. Indeed, so I'll provide a bit of a policy context. A lot has been going on over the past months already regarding competitiveness of net zero industry and net zero technologies. A bit of a context first of all. So you know that we have set in stone our objective of carbon neutrality by 2050, and for this, net zero technologies will of course be instrumental. The access to net zero technologies is more and more essential, and we need it to ensure that our energy systems are resilient. However, currently, Europe is a net importer of net zero technologies, and we run the risk to replace our dependency on fossil fuels with technological and industrial dependencies in the field of net zero technologies. Already at the beginning of the year, the Commission has put forward the Green Deal Industrial Plan, and with this Green Deal Industrial Plan in March 2020, the Net Zero Industry Act. And I think this Net Zero Industry Act, the title of the webinar also picks up on this net zero industry terminology, is really a key piece of legislation. The idea of the Net Zero Industry Act, or NZIA, as we call it over here, is really to overcome barriers to the scale up of the manufacturing of net zero technologies in the EU. And this would allow to increase competitiveness of our industry and, in the end, improve the union's energy resilience. For this, the Act provides a regulatory framework that simplifies and speeds up the permitting. So this was really seen as something that would prove extremely useful for industry, but that's not the only action that is put forward in the Act. The proposed Act will also improve net zero technologies access to markets, and a range of tools are promoted, such as one-stop shops or also net zero strategic projects. In the Act, and this, I know that there are a lot of discussions ongoing on this, there are two types of technologies: net zero technologies and strategic net zero technologies. And offshore wind is identified in the proposed Act as a strategic net zero technologies. As such, it of course benefits from additional provisions put forward in the Act. I can, of course, later on expand a bit more on what is in the Act and how this will help the industry. I want, of course, as you know, here the Act has been proposed by the Commission and is now discussed by the co-legislators, and we hope for a swift outcome of these discussions in the beginning of the 2024. And as you mentioned, Anna, another very recent piece of initiative put forward is the wind power package. On this, unfortunately, as you can imagine, I cannot give you a lot of insights since the package is still in preparation, but still, we've seen, and there was a lot of attention on it in the past months, that our wind industry, which is a leading industry in the world, is now facing some challenges. And with this European wind power package, the idea is to address many of those challenges. So it will fast-track permitting even more, it will improve the auction systems and support the skills, and it will also improve access to finance and support stable supply chains. So more to come on this later on. I cannot give you much more information, but happy to discuss and to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Pablo. We tried indeed maybe to get some insight of what the package is about, but I'm sure it's keeping you very busy still these days. So we appreciate that you make the time to discuss it with us. More on it later, indeed. Then I would like to maybe turn to Ivan from Wind Europe. Something that Pablo has mentioned is that the wind industry has a lot of barriers to overcome, and this is where the Net Zero Industry Act comes in order to increase the competitiveness of the sector. If you could paint a picture of how the market looks like at the moment, how would it look like?
Thank you, Anna, and thank you everyone for the opportunity to speak today. Well, the market for wind energy, despite the very high ambitions and what otherwise would have been an extremely good business case, now is becoming a really difficult financial endeavor in Europe. The wind industry is struggling in Europe, just to make it very clear. So this is why it's extremely welcome that we have now new policies being prepared to actually support the competitiveness and the scale up of the industry. Just to put it very blank, we are too small in Europe. The supply chain is too small to actually meet the big ambitions. And if you add the poor financial health that we have, the fact that we need to have at least 36 gigawatts of manufacturing capacity in Europe, according to the Net Zero Industry Act proposed by the European Commission, makes the task incredibly difficult. Companies need to invest at the time where they are actually losing money. And that is not washing well with investors, of course, because they do not see the prospects of actually those investments being recovered. This is, of course, a consequence of different geopolitical, but also bad policy implementation in some countries. And we've been looking at permitting for over many years as the main bottleneck to actually increase the dynamism of the wind industry. If you permit less projects, you are able to order less turbines, you are able to put less purchase orders to your contractors, and therefore you are importing or manufacturing domestically less amount of components and producing less amount of material. So everything needs to come from the pooling of faster permitting from authorities. Now, of course, having faster permitting authorities is very important, but the other big element that we are hoping for in the upcoming wind power package is guidance from the European Commission on how auctions need to happen from countries. And very specifically, you know that most of the auctions at the moment are based on price. That means that developers and operators that bid the lowest possible price in auctions are the winners, which is something that obviously was there to incentivize competition. Now it has become a really big strain in the supply chain because of the very small margins and the increasing inflation pressures that we have on raw material cost and transport prices all over the supply chain. So everything has been coming a perfect storm for the industry, which is struggling very much. Specifically in the Baltic Sea, we have seen extremely good developments when it comes to ambitions, but when it comes to the implementation of some of these policies, very poor performance, if I am honest with you. Many of the countries that are in the Baltic region, they have not have strong policies implemented and actually outlined in what we call the national energy and energy climate plans, which is basically the guiding document that countries need to put forward to the European Commission of how they are going to implement a lot of the policies that are being enacted in Europe. And we see very little details, very little specifications of how these policies are going to be implemented. I will leave my last intervention here, and I'm sure we're going to discuss more about it. The critical role that electricity grids have in expanding wind energy and allowing offshore wind energy to go to the places that actually is needed the most. We are also looking forward for the European Commission's upcoming EU grid plan, in which we hope that there will be significant improvements in the planning and the facilitation of investments, anticipatory investments for grids that actually enable the transmission system operators to build the grids that are needed for the significant increase of offshore wind capacity. And particularly in the Baltic Sea, we would like that this is something is been taken as a matter of priority. We have very important network development plans that are being put forward, in which already countries have a certain amount of ambition. And now we need to make sure that those ambitions are actually planned for when it comes to infrastructure development. So here you are. This is very shortly how we are, an industry that is struggling, an industry that needs much better policies at auction design level, an industry that needs governments to spell out the policies for implementation of all these measures, and an industry that needs more grids. Back to you, Anna.
Thank you very much, Ivan. Indeed, a lot to be watching out for in the next months. The wind power package on the one hand, by next year, the final national energy and climate plans at EU level, the EU grid plan, indeed, as a critical backbone to make sure that we can make this transition to renewables happen. So a lot to be discussing indeed. Pity that 1 hour will not be enough to address all of these challenges, but we'll do our best. Now I would like to pose a similar question then to Anu. Do you agree also with the picture that Ivan has painted on the state of the market, and how do you see also these recent challenges on supply chains straining the business developments of offshore wind players?
Absolutely. I think it's crucial to make sure and understand that all those important topics need to be sorted out as soon as possible. Is it either, permitting, supply chains, access to finance, and so on and so forth, and especially also skills. But I think what Ivan really rightfully put was that the implementation phase, at least in the Baltic Sea, have been, let's say, nicely, not 100%. But the problem is that we are looking only on the 2030 targets. Every country in the Baltic Sea is looking 2030 targets. But with some years, you cannot do a lot. And therefore, also, I think that in the Baltic Sea, the problem rather is not maybe about the auctions design as such, but rather finding new ways how to implement those long visions. Because, for example, Estonia, where I'm from, we have 10% of the Baltic Sea, and we have 1,700 square kilometers bottom fix offshore areas submitted. But we don't need that for our country. So we need to have a common goal. And even our great neighbor Latvia, they are even having even more areas for offshore wind. So we need to find and really think differently how to make sure those new projects, new pipelines, and of course, solving up at the same time the projects and pipelines and supply chain challenges, what we are having now, but simply making sure that the developments of the offshore wind will not end by the 2030, rather a little bit more, in the 2040 or even 50. So let's little bit not forget about the future goals, aims, and make the certainty towards there. What I also want to say is that there is a lot of challenges, of course, in the supply chain at the moment, and we need to little bit open up the market for the newcomers. And this is not the good situation at the moment. When we had the Ukrainian war, we were quite protectionistic also in the country-wise. And I think a little bit what I'm expecting from the new initiative is that I don't want to say forcing, but incentivizing countries, regions, developers, public sectors, TSOs to work together and find the solution, what is long-term, not by projects or country by country, but rather holistically, because this will be the success of the investment certainty, and also, of course, that there will be new project pipelines and actions coming, further. Because when we are keeping and solving only the problems at the moment, then the space will stop after 2030, and then we realize that, we have been forgetting the future plans. So let's see how it will go. What are the new packages coming? I do hope that there will be regional cooperation a little bit incentivized. I hope that there will be lots of topics about the grid. We need to do that, and we need to find ways, not only that the TSOs are doing a lot of things, but rather together with the developers, with the states, with the policy planning, that we know what to expect, and if there is a source of lack of resources, that we can complement each other and make it things further. So I think I will end here, and hopefully we will have more interesting discussion about specific topics. Is it about supply chain challenges? Is it about the grid developments? Is it the state obligations or goals or so on and so forth? Because there is so many angles what we can take, and of course how to integrate those new systems, technologies, hydrogen into the concepts also is a totally new topic to discuss.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Anu. I really like what you mentioned about looking for this collaborations from public sector, private sector, investors, everyone in the value chain, and do it in a holistic manner and not really on a project by project basis. This is really interesting, and I think an interesting point for discussion as well. And we will get back indeed to the question of supply chains very shortly. Before that, I would like to then give the floor for our last in our introduction round, but definitely not the least, to Valerie Godínez Azcuaga, the director of the Sensoria Center for Excellence. Valerie, what are perhaps some innovations and some future trends that we should be looking into in the offshore wind market? And do you think that they are going to help to address many of the challenges that we've seen overcome? What can you tell us about that?
Good morning, and good morning to all my fellow panelists, and thank you for the opportunity. Great question. It is important to know that offshore wind is coming of age with a lot of advantages, because there has been a lot of technology that has been developed in other industries in the past that can be very easily transplanted to offshore wind. And the important thing is that if we want to reach those goals for net zero, what we need to do is we need to keep the wind turbines running in the most efficient possible way. So there are already a lot of technology that is built in from the OEMs to the point of installation, but there are certain components that are still not being censored enough. I will say, for example, that cementation, the tower, the nacelle, drivetrain already have technology that can produce lots of data in real time. And but there are certain components that are very obvious from the point of view of importance in a wind turbine, like the blades, that don't have enough technology built in. And this is one of the big challenges. If we want to keep our turbines running efficiently, we need to complete that cycle of installing sensors. And there is a lot of technology that is being tried as we speak to monitor what happens to the blades, for example. There is vibration technology, there is acoustic technology, there is traditional load sensors, et cetera, et cetera. All those sensors can be installed and can be tried. But the important part of this is that all those sensors will produce lots and lots of data. And here is the challenge: what to do with that data, how to use the data produced by all these sensing systems and transform it into actionable information for the operators. Because this is the key. If it doesn't matter if we have every single component in a wind turbine with sensors, if we don't extract important information that can tell us in near real time or in real time how to operate better. So I will say that the challenge technologically is that what to do with all the data that is generated by the wind turbines themselves, and how to feed that into realistic models that can keep those turbines running efficiently and avoid as much as possible failures, have the information ready to plan operation and maintenance, because this is the key. You don't want to plan maintenance just based on historical fact, but really on the condition of each one of these wind turbines. And here is where the big challenge lies. How to build those models that can take advantage of all that data that is being produced, and how to feed that actionable information to the operators so they can keep the wind turbines running. I will conclude with this because I think that is really the challenge.
This is really interesting. Thank you very much, Valerie, indeed, on the kind of power of data and how it can really help us in supporting the turbines to run efficiently and really to obtain our objectives. So that's another question that I noted down on the technological technological side. Then I would like to come back then to the question of supply chains specifically, because that is a concern that has been noted down, and something that you were planning to hint before, Pablo, is how the Net Zero Industry Act is supporting offshore wind concretely, and which specific measures does it intend to bring up. So maybe if you could elaborate a bit more on that, since we didn't have that much time before. What can you tell us?
Yes, of course. Thanks a lot, Anna, and very interesting feedback also from fellow panelists. I mean, in terms of supply chain, first of all, I think it's important to flag that different initiatives put forward by the Commission are working together. In particular, in this case, the Critical Raw Materials Act that will really target supply and diversification of imports of raw materials, and that indeed, as I mentioned, the Net Zero Industry Act, which will more be focused on developing the manufacturing of key components in the EU. To do this, there are different provisions put forward. First of all, ensuring that permitting goes much faster, so it will be streamlined. One-stop shops would be implemented, and it will also provide a lot of predictability, certainty for investors to actually put money in these projects. Then there's a specific aspect on access to markets, and here non-price criteria are put forward in the proposal from the Commission, in particular criteria on environmental sustainability, criteria on innovation, and also a dimension of system integration, and finally a criterion on resilience and security of supply. So I think these provisions are also very timely and will provide quite a lot of support for the industry. And then finally, another, I think, type of shortage of bottleneck that we see is access to skills. More and more, we have a skills issue, as we say. You know that 2023 was the year of skills in the EU, and the Net Zero Industry Act will put forward the establishment of Net Zero Industry Academies to really help with the development of skill for the net zero industry. But as I was mentioning, the offshore wind will be identified as a strategic net zero technology. And as such, it will benefit from additional provisions, notably the shorter permitting deadlines. So it will be 9-12 months deadlines, which was quite short. And there's a concept of overriding public interest put forward in the proposal from the Commission. And then for specifically net zero strategic projects, member states and Commission will help through the net zero platform to crowd in private investments and accelerate their implementation. So as you see, it's a set of different initiatives, of different actions that will work together for, on one side, boost the manufacturing of the components in the EU, and then strengthen our supply chain resilience. It's not all about domestic supply chains, and diversification of imports is also crucial, both for the Net Zero Industry Act, but also, and importantly, for the Critical Raw Materials Act. But all in all, it's about making sure that our supply chains are more resilient, and that we can enhance our strategic autonomy.
Thank you very much, Pablo. Indeed, the key question here is how to make our industry much more resilient. So, are there any comments? Would you like to respond to what the other panelists have been saying? Yeah, who would want to?
Perhaps I can come in very quickly. The challenge of supply chains here, particularly for offshore wind, is extremely pressing. Very much agree with what Anu mentioned before about the long-term visibility that we need in policies. That's the role of governments, of course, giving us longer-term visibility beyond 2030. But let me stress, the criticality of the survival of the supply chain industry in Europe is at stake now. So whilst we will welcome always having long-term visibility, which basically brings investments, What we need is action now to secure the supply chain in the coming 2 to 3 years. We are literally at a crossroad in which a lot of investments are about to take place either in Europe or outside Europe. So the supply chain is in a very important moment that needs to see policies that actually are incentivizing investments in the expansion of the supply chain in Europe. We need to pass from 7 gigawatts of wind turbine capacity at offshore manufacturing capacity from 7 to 20 gigawatts. So that's almost 3 times more the amount of wind turbines that we need to be building in the next 7 years. And of course, decisions on manufacturing facilities cannot happen from one week to the other, but they need to already be incentivized as from next year if you want to reach the ambitious targets that many of these countries have, not least in the Baltic Sea. We need to pass from 600 foundations that we can build per year today to more than 1,300 foundations. We need to almost double the amount of foundations that we need for offshore wind. In the same way, if we are going to transmit a significant amount of wind power from offshore, we have capacity of today of building up to 5 large HVDC substations in Europe, and we need to actually be building 20 a year, 20 big HVDC substations a year. There is not enough space in the ports. There is not enough manufacturing capacity for actually building these huge platforms and this huge electrical equipment. We are having a serious deficit of vessels today, in which we actually need a significant amount of increase. Almost 12 billion euros we estimate that are needed to invest in vessels for building offshore wind farms in the coming years. And these vessels are not only to actually build wind turbines in Europe, but also they are used in many international markets. It's very well known that a lot of our vessel suppliers, they go and build wind farms in Asia, and they go and build and support the build out of offshore wind in the United States. So that needs to be increasing. But fundamentally also, as I said, the grids is a bottleneck, not only in terms of permitting, but also in terms of capacity that needs to be built at manufacturing. We are building in Europe around 1,900 kilometers of cables. That includes the subsea cables and the inter-array cables in offshore wind farms. And we need to pass to 3,200 kilometers a year of capacity of manufacturing. So I'm just giving you these numbers just to so everybody sizes the amount of the challenge that we have. And I fully sympathize with what Valerie said. Of course, we need to improve much better the monitoring of our turbines that we have installed today, but also that the ones that we need to plan for the future. Key topics for us that will connect policies with data is ensuring that in the non-price criteria of auctions, there are significant elements for rewarding and actually allowing promoters to compete in these auctions with very strong cybersecurity assurances. We want that those promoters that have a lot of data and that they will be able to install a lot of this very cutting-edge technology, all that data to remain in Europe. So we want data residency and cybersecurity pre-qualification criteria for all the auctions that are taking place in Europe, as well as a very, very big focus on the labor standards for the supply chain as very important tools to actually prop up the competitiveness of European supply chain.
Thank you very much, Ivan. The scale of the challenges is huge, as you mentioned. Anu, would you like to come in?
Exactly. Thank you for that. Absolutely. Just to make sure, I was surely not emphasizing that the current challenges are not the topic. Absolutely, please. And Ivan, as always, you can bring in the excellence and samples, and you can see indeed how crucial it is to solve those problems now. But I would add also that just to understand it, why it's a little bit needed to think a little bit outside of the box also is the flexible demand response. We need additional batteries, and absolutely, we need to have EU supply chain here, raw materials, R&D, innovation, and so on and so forth. So those things are needed, maybe not today also, of course today, but in the long run, and we can start to make new ways today, and rather, again, learning from past mistakes that we have lost the possibilities previously. So I would say that there is a momentum to use the possibility to learn that we have missed opportunities previously, and really make the next steps how we can build up the EU supply chains, not only vessels, cables, HV stations, ports, and everything, but also batteries and other technologies what are crucial to actually speed up in the long term the renewable energy developments in all the areas and all the seas in Europe, of course.
Thank you very much, Anu. And then I would like to maybe ask a question related to that to Valerie. How do you think that this current supply chain challenges are hampering and affecting the innovations in all the technologies that you've mentioned?
Yes, thank you, Anna. Definitely, it might be a problem because there are a few initiatives, mostly in Europe, I will say very few in the US, in terms of how to produce all these sensors, all this instrumentation that should go into modern wind turbines. Most of the challenges are going to construction, and as it was mentioned, one of the big issues is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is very important, and every single instrument and every single sensor that goes into a turbine has to will have to comply with certain cybersecurity requirements. That is an area where I think it's important, the cooperation to establish minimum requirements for all these systems in terms of cybersecurity, in terms of what type of information or minimum information they will provide. There should be international cooperation in this area, I think. So far, what I have seen is that there are individual initiatives by different countries, but there is not necessarily a global effort in Europe, I think, of establishing those guidelines for how to handle the data, how to handle the monitoring system, what will be the minimum challenges. I think this is an important area where we will have to work together and establish minimum guidelines.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Valerie. Then just to remind everyone that we're going to have time for some questions from the audience. You can ask them in the different comment section of whatever channel you are tuning into, either on LinkedIn and YouTube or on Twitter/X. So we're going to be able to get a couple of questions before wrapping up the webinar. But I wouldn't want to leave the discussion without asking about another one of the crucial aspects that has been mentioned already a few times as well, which is the question of skills. As Pablo mentioned before, 2023 has been the European Year of Skills in the EU. So I would like to understand better what's really the scale of the challenge in terms of skills, like what are particularly the kind of positions or areas in which the skills gap really needs to urgently be bridged. Who would like to come into this question?
Perhaps I can give you some quick numbers, because we actually just held a webinar about the skills needed in the industry. So today there are 300,000 people working in the wind industry in Europe. 77,000 of them are in offshore wind. With the expansion that is foreseen in the future, we think that the European wind energy industry will be able to sustain more than 500,000 workers by 2030. That's 515,000 workers by 2030. Now, this comprises direct and indirect employment. the indirect employment is the one that is basically created as a consequence of the activity in wind energy. So, for example, the workers in the metal industry, the workers that are in factories producing materials, perhaps they are not as direct involved, despite that they have a big role in the value chain. They are not as direct involved in the activities of wind industry. So the challenge for the wind industry in creating direct jobs, and I'm just going to highlight that this is about direct jobs because the indirect jobs are created as a consequence of the direct activities that we have on the economy, is that we need to pass from about 888,000 workers today to 360,000 in 2030. So that's a growth of 170,000 workers between now and 2030. So seven years for 170,000 workers. Okay, so I'm giving you a lot of numbers here, so I'm sorry about that. But they are mostly divided in jobs that are needed for planning, wind energy. We need 8,000 jobs to be created in the next 7 years for planning. That includes special planning developers, project simulation engineers, permitting coordinators, biodiversity specialists for environmental impact assessments, etc. We need another 90,000 jobs in manufacturing facilities. So that's warehousing, forklifts, machineries, operators, manufacturers, steel welders in foundations, etc., etc. 49,000, almost 50,000 jobs that are needed in construction for installing projects. That's things such as rope access workers, gearbox technicians, machine operators, crane operators, offshore cable installators, etc. And something that I'm sure Valerie will have an opinion on, when it comes to operation and maintenance, we estimate that we need to create 19,000 jobs for operating and maintaining wind turbines, which obviously will have a significant correlation in terms of the development of digital tools and other methods to actually maintain the turbines as we move forward. But we are talking about jobs that are related to, for example, logistic operations when it comes to offshore, how to ensure that maintenance is done in the weather windows of operations that we have in those parks, but also health and safety managers, power electronic experts, automation, people that is able to actually understand all the data that is going to be created by those multiple sensors and all the systems that we are going to implement in offshore wind farms.
Mm-hmm. It seems very interesting, Ivan. Thank you. That we have so many opportunities and there's so much demand, but the supply is struggling to keep pace with this rate. Who else would like to comment on this question?
I will maybe jump in indeed from the regional perspective and being one of the regional developers. I think again there is understanding that we are needing lots of offshore and onshore, professionals, and of course in our region is known for engineering background, welders and good high-level professional, but they have not been trained for the offshore wind because, let's be quite frank, there have not been any offshore wind parks even. So this is one, again, the topic that we can, our chicken egg topic. So what can become first? So I think that what we could do, and we need to open up the market internally in EU, really, go to the countries where even when we don't have offshore wind parks at the moment, but we can provide the skills and knowledge and experience on really engineering profile and then reshape them in offshore sites. So this is something what we can do it. And of course, I'm really happy to say that, for example, in Lithuania, there are in Klaipėda region, many schools are already thinking about it. I can see that also happening in Estonia, that they are profiling themselves to offshore sectors also or onshore. And I just learned last week a really nice initiative from Poland, this Edu Offshore, where there will be a youth forum for regional ones to build this knowledge and awareness and attractiveness of the offshore wind skills sector. But I think that indeed the question is where you can study about it when you even want to. So you either go to the UK or already, other markets. And then the region is again losing another great mind or professional about it. So this is how to balance those all the needs in the sector? It's the question.
I see. Maybe this is when where the net zero academies come to play. I don't know if Pablo, this is something that you would want to elaborate a bit more on.
Yes, indeed. I mean, so net zero academies, and not only, you will see, for example, that recently under the Pact for Skills, the Commission has put forward the idea of a large-scale skills partnership for the renewable energy industrial ecosystem. So this involves a lot of reskilling, a lot of training also, and a lot of work with the member states to make sure that we have the correct access to skills. So it's indeed a challenge, and we need to make sure that we all work together to address it. And then, if I can open up a bit the debate, I think to some extent we also have a pool of talent that goes a bit, let's say, unexploited, if I can say like this, which is the underrepresentation of women in the sector. So we estimate that in the wind industry, only 20%, around 20% of workers are women. So here, all the sectoral policies to encourage women to integrate STEM studies, to integrate the sector, will also allow to expand the pool of talent and really tackle this skills challenge that the industry is facing.
Indeed, a really important point. We indeed are in dire need of new workforce, and then I mean, probably the lowest hanging fruit is to being sure that that women find their place also in STEM related careers, which are still vastly a male dominated sector, unfortunately. I would maybe allow for another answer before starting to get questions from the audience. I don't know if Valerie, also connecting the question of the skills and the tech side, what can you tell us about that? Which thoughts has it sparked you?
Yeah, this is indeed a very important question. And what we have seen in the US, and I think Anu mentioned, is that there is a huge pool of talent in other industries, for example, in the oil and gas industry, that is starting to migrate towards wind. I think this could be, part of the solution of getting skills that are, crucial to the wind industry. The other part also is the development of new robotic techniques when it comes to repairs. So far, most of the repairing of wind turbines are done by operators, typically operators on ropes. But there are several companies in Western Europe and some in the US that have been developing robotic solutions that require much less human intervention. And the challenge is still to reach the efficiency on repair and maintenance that is achieved by humans only. It is on the uptake, and I think in the next 3 to 4 years, we're going to see an explosion on those type of solutions that will somehow reduce the need for highly skilled technicians in that area. However, this creates another need, which is the need for skills in the development of this robotic system, these automated systems. And so the challenge is transfer from the actual area in the field to the area of development.
Mm-hmm. Really, really interesting. Thank you very much, Valerie. Now, I would like to start picking up a couple of questions from the audience. And the first one that I would like to pick up on is centered around the Baltic region. We are in a Baltic Wind webinar, after all. And it's a question from Laurent Baudouin-Kramer. He says that indeed that one of the key challenges is the supply chain issue. The supply chain is not ready or currently available in the region. We are currently in a vendor market with a worldwide competition, and this means that the countries around the Baltic have to urgently demonstrate attractiveness for the suppliers, considering the geographic challenges. So from this point of view, which policies, etc., are proposed to support this? Are proposed or maybe should be proposed? So who could take that question?
I perhaps give you a little bit of introduction, and then I'll let Anu to also as expert in that region. Poland has followed a very interesting approach that was originally initiated in the United Kingdom, in which it asks developers that are bidding for auctions to demonstrate with a document that is called supply chain plan how they will be investing in the capacity of the value chain locally. This is short, obviously, to having a mandate on domestic productions, which we think it's quite unhelpful to expand the manufacturing capacity in other places, but it does provide incentives. Rather than giving you a stick, it gives you a carrot for developers to demonstrate that they will be investing in local supply chains. And I think that's a very smart way of doing it. Everybody, I think, is very much agreeing that this is a competition. And of course, there will be countries that will be looking at having a significant amount of footprint of manufacturing capacity across whatever value chain segment that they think are by far more competitiveness. So supply chain requirements, supply chain plans, requirements in auctions, I think is a good policy to be enacted. Not in any way mandating any domestic local content or attaching any of the state aid or permitting to build and mandating or obliging anyone to build manufacturing capacities, but do incentivize that in local contexts.
Thank you very much, Ivan. Then maybe I would like to pass the ball to Anu, our expert in the region.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I wouldn't recall that one. I just have a little knowledge about the region. But I think that it's absolutely crucial to have the scale effect. And Poland, as a good example, as Ivan said also, that they can have it because there is so many initiatives, lots of large scale, lots of ports and so on and so forth. But looking at other countries where we are just in the beginning in the region on the development of the offshore wind, we still go project by project, developer by developer, and little bit competing with each other rather than uniting each other, because this is one of the topics where I was mentioning also that we might need more cooperation and incentivized collaboration between the countries, also between the developers, between, the states and so on and so forth. The market or the potential in the region is so big that we shouldn't be afraid of, uniting and sharing in that way that, okay, let's prioritize. One country can do a specialization in one thing, other can do other thing. We don't have to be, and we cannot be all the hubs or the, all the ports, every country. So we have to be a little bit giving in, but also to receive that one. And therefore, I would rather see that we need a good example of collaboration, good examples of scaling up the sector, because then the numbers will come up and we can actually prioritize the project. So it's all about member states, but also the developers to unite and actually make a common vision. Okay, what we can do together to actually deliver the results. So yeah, there is lots of initiatives. One of the good examples from Estonia again is that, for example, there is this dual-use port investment done. So it's partly for the military mobility and partly for the offshore wind. Hopefully, it will go further, and we can really see the benefits of it. But let's see. Anyway, lots of actions are needed. Poland is leading the way for sure. Lots of good examples, and I hope that one day all other nations will unite and find the common ways also.
Thank you very much, Anu. Then I have another question, and it's actually related to that. Let me just quickly please find it. There you go. It's from Oluwatobi Odubela. Apologies if I may have mispronounced. what are the future plans to integrate the various countries that share policies together to allow a less complex approach for developers? I think this is once again revolving around the question of cooperation and partnerships. So I don't know if who would want to jump into this question. I'm curious to understand if it's kind of region specific for the Baltic or European or global, but any thoughts in future integration, policy integrations, and
I'll add also the European Commission to give a little bit more context. But there are very important regional cooperation mechanisms. These are on a voluntary level in which countries they come and exchange aspects on policies, particularly for electricity and/or energy. And in the Baltic region, we have the Baltic Energy Interconnection Plan, also called BIMIP, that has worked for many years now, and that has given very positive signals and exchanges on how to bring the Baltic countries that originally were interconnected to the Russian system power-wise, how to be incorporated more into the electricity grid that is European. And they have, for a few years now, a particular working group on offshore wind, which I think has been instrumental in actually starting collaborating many of these things. Crucially, at the highest political level, we saw last year a very important political declaration between the heads of states of many of the countries, or all the countries that are bordering the Baltic Sea, the so-called Marienborg Declaration, in which countries pledge to work collaboratively to at least 20 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030. So there are some initiatives. Let's go back to the beginning of this webinar, and Anu said it perfectly well. What we need is now the implementation of those policies. We need on-the-ground implementation of policies, and we need the European Commission to help us to monitor and to give also guidance to countries on how to do it.
Thank you very much, Ivan. Maybe Paolo, you would want to add something on that, on what's the potential of regional cooperation for offshore wind in the Baltic Sea, but not only, or not necessarily there.
Yes, indeed. I mean, I'll be very short also in the interest of time, but I think what's really interesting is the sea basin approach. And this was already embedded in the offshore strategy that was now published already, I think, 3 years ago. And there's this sea basin approach with the Baltic Sea and with the other sea basins across the EU. And then I think that's something extremely relevant in this case, is to ensure exchange of best practices around the different sea basins. And we have several regional and intra-regional fora that allow for this. So there is already a lot of cooperation, and now it's about moving forward. Of course, I'm very happy, by the way, that Ivan mentioned monitoring. We know that this is crucial. We have now a competitiveness progress report that assesses the competitiveness of the EU sector annually. It will be published by the end of the month, and in our proposal for the Net Zero Industry Act, there's an important part of the proposal which targets the monitoring of the sector, to allow to assess how much we progress, but also to allow to make sure that the correct initiatives, the correct actions are put, and that progress is achieved in the most efficient way.
Thank you very much, Pablo. Well, indeed, you mentioned the interest of time, and time has gone by really fast because we only have 2 minutes to go, which also shows indeed the scale of the challenge and the challenges in plural, and what an exciting and intense period for the wind industry this is. We've been discussing extensively the question of supply chains, of skills, of the technological perspective and innovations and advancements to look up to, and also the challenges in this front as well. But there are so many topics that we could have continued talking about. We've briefly mentioned the question of permitting, which is usually one of the big topics that always emerge in fora and events like this. We could have talked about the environmental considerations for the offshore wind industry. So this really highlights how important it is important these kind of events are, and I'm sure that this is also going to give inspiration to Baltic Wind for future events to dive deeper into the topics that we haven't necessarily had the time to discuss today. So first of all, thank you very much to all of our speakers that have joined us today, Pablo, Ivan, and Valerie. I think it's been a great discussion, and I've personally learned a lot. I'm sure that everyone who's been watching us has as well. I've seen a very active audience in our different social media channels, also sharing and commenting on and giving their opinions, and also asking us some very interesting questions. So thank you very much for that. And well, see you in the next events, and have a great day. Don't hesitate to continue to follow Baltic Wind in its social media channels, and LinkedIn and in X.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.